All right, this is the free report on 7 things you need to know before spending a penny on recording. This is Johnny D.
And I'm Kelly Shanefield.
And we're from Daredevil Production, located here on Nashville's famous Music Row. And this town is exactly like Jason Aldean's song says. It's a crazy town full of neon dreams. Everybody picks and everybody sings. So there are so many people that come to Nashville, and they work with amazing talent and unbelievable studio facilities, but they still, once or twice a week, we end up hearing projects there where people spend a lot of money and they end up being very disappointed.
And those are the people that did pretty well, by the way, you should say. Some people end up in some mediocre studios with some mediocre musicians. That happens too.
That's a good point too. Where they
you're giving the best case scenario.
Total crap. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a good point. And you know what? It even goes down from there when you get out of Nashville, which is sort of a hub for all this.
It's a steep decline.
And you get into Milwaukee. I mean, I'm from Wisconsin. I recorded in a few recording studios in Milwaukee and been completely disappointed where there was just no direction. I wasn't educated enough to know at the time what the right move was, and so you start taking your cues from whoever's going to, perceivably be in charge, and whoever's in the room, whoever steps up to the mic to shout out some barking orders, and you start doing that. Next thing you know, you're like, So what we want to do is, and you know what, I'll tell you a quick story about this. Like we did a demo back in the rock band that I had back in the 80s, and I remember going to the studio, and our bass player was like, he had his like killer bass rig and the dodecaphonic rig stereo, like he was, he just wanted to be like Billy Sheehan. That's who he wanted to be,
right,
a bass god. And so he had reverb on his bass, and he asked the engineer, should I put reverb on? The engineer's like, well, do you think it sounds cool? And he's like, yeah. So we recorded with it, and then we ended up like bumping up through a set of connections and getting this thing mixed by some pro producers out in LA who were right on the strip doing like all these killer bands that had deals and everything. And I'm not going to mention their names, but oh my God, I just remember sitting in that studio after flying out with my 2-inch reel tape, and I'm just like, this is awesome. These guys are going to I just can't wait to hear what they think about my music, And the first interaction I have with them, they come out of the studio and he just wants to choke me out,
Did you put reverb on the bass?
Tell me you didn't put reverb on the bass. I'm like, So it just felt like a moron. And listen, they did it. They were incredible. They salvaged the crap out of that thing and made it sound awesome. But we're going to try to help you avoid some of this stuff with this information right here that we're about to give up. So it's going to protect your monetary investment. Whether you're going in to do song demos or whether you're going in to do artist tracks, you are going to be spending money, and you want to make sure that you, as Kelly said in a previous episode, that you can make the most educated decision that you can.
That's right.
So, Kel, you and I went back and forth on exactly what kind of data to put in this information here. You came up with number 1. Have a clear idea of what your goal is for the recording. Like, go into that a little bit.
Well, every situation is different. Would be you're a songwriter, a singer-songwriter, an artist. Depending on your budget, depending on what exactly you want to have happen from this experience.
Right.
There's
is
a
it
lot
a demo?
of different...
Is it a song demo? Are you trying to pitch it to somebody? Like, is your whole intention to get some famous artist to listen to your music, or some music supervisor on a TV show or a commercial or an independent film to sit there and say, wow, I really like this song, I want to have this other band and recut it? If your intention is that, there's a certain approach that you need to take for that. That's just
right.
Is pragmatic. It makes sense.
Right.
And then if your intention is to be an artist, if your intention is to be the singer and the songwriter and promote yourself, then you want to take a completely different direction. So you need to make sure that you understand the difference between the two.
And you should mention, too, that in TV and film, they tend to use that recording. But the fact that it's not a little bit more lo-fi or not as refined or whatever, it tends to be part of it.
Right. And it tends to, again, like, you don't want to, on certain scenes where the music is there to enhance a certain scene. You don't want everybody like just falling out with the actors and going, holy cow. It's got to be there to sort of be there to enhance, but not to overtake the scene. You don't want the music stealing the scene.
Yeah, that's kind of a different little avenue that we don't delve into a whole bunch, but we're happy to help in any way we can.
That's right. So, is it a demo? If it's a demo, you're going to be approaching it from, it's far better to use a professional singer. We'll say that right off the bat.
99 times out of 100.
99 times out of 100. There's always exceptions to the rule, but I mean, I would bet a week's pay better to keep yourself out of it if you're a singer.
That's right.
And you want
Even
it
if
to
you're
be
a great
demo.
singer.
Yeah. Especially if you're a great singer.
Yeah.
Like,
it's
because
all about
you're
the
gonna be so
representation of the
artistic.
song. It's not about being an artist. It's about being a great songwriter, having a great song, and having a great representation of that song.
That's right. And so you're going to have a representation of the lyric, the vibe, the melody, and it's going to be really awesome, but just bland enough so that somebody else can read that.
There has to be enough room for the next person that wants to cut it for them to put their stamp on it.
And to take it somewhere.
Take it somewhere. That's right. From somewhere different.
and then
somewhere. But yeah, exactly.
And then if they're an artist, it's the exact opposite of that. You're going to take a lot more
polar
time.
opposite, yep.
You're going to spend a lot more time on arrangements, on tracking, on vocals, on mixing, because the whole idea is you want people to be blown away by the voice. You want people to be blown away by the message, by the song, by the band, by the sound, by everything. And it's got to go to a whole nother level. It's got to be radio ready.
Right. It still starts with the song, but it goes a lot further than that.
That's right. So that's number one. Number two, understand the difference between a demo and an artist track, and most importantly, why they're different. We just copied that, so you got number 1 and 2 right there. And one of the things I wanted to mention was, when it comes to an artist track is here's where artists, really make the difference. Okay, for instance, if you take a song like "In Color" from Jamie Johnson, where as soon as his voice comes in, first of all, I don't think there's anybody else that could have ever cut that song like him. Like,
right.
His voice was
certainly
just
him.
so unbelievable. And then the song itself is just absolutely incredible. There's a message there. It's deep. There's a melody. There's a vibe. And there's that voice. And it's just all those perfect things that came in to make that the song of the year, the year that came out. And then another like really, really super hit song. Remember Phil Collins' Susu Studio? Mm-hmm. Phil Collins will tell you he doesn't know what that song is about. So there it's not about, that's where the artist thing, it's just all about Phil Collins. Like, he does his thing and it's cool, man. And he has this big, huge hit, and I like the song.
The example I just thought of when you said that before you even got to the Phil Collins was the Joe Cocker, "You Are So Beautiful."
Right.
It's all about that vocal. He doesn't hardly say anything. Yep. He says it does make sense, but he's not saying a lot. It's all about the vibey, one of the most vibey vocals I've ever heard.
So there's a difference between like an artist thing and, like if I was to do "You Are So Beautiful" and do my little vocal on a demo, you'd just be like, next. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, he made that thing happen.
He turned it into something special.
So that's why it's different to know, you need to know what's your intention, what you're going for. So therefore you're not losing track of it, because when things start to get busy in the studio, it can get real hectic. And a lot of times if you don't have a clear map of what you need to do,
you get off the tracks.
Yeah. And then it gets a little scary and people start to get upset, So also understand what genre you're working in and what has to happen to reproduce what you heard in your head. And this happens a lot. If you're doing a country thing or a rock thing, and it's different. Listen, there's always exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, you're going to want a live band. You're going to want a band in the room together.
It's certainly going to be more organic, and there's going to be more magic that happens when you put all the people in the room.
That's right. And if you are using a situation where you're going into a studio where one guy is going to cut all your tracks, then you're going to lose a lot of that vibe, that country vibe or that rock vibe. Mm-hmm. Or if you're going to go into a situation with
even if it's a pop thing, unless it's a programmed pop thing, it's still the same deal.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we're going to get to the program thing in a second. The other aspect is if you work with an online studio, there's a bunch of them that are out there. They have killer musicians, Grammy nominated or award-winning engineers. I mean, they have all the right talent, but there's just something that's lost when you go from one killer drummer who does his track and sends the tracks to another place where the bass player lays down his bass track, and then he sends those tracks to a third place where the guitar player overdubs his thing, and there's just something that's missing there. And a lot of times we hear it ends up sounding like elevator music. If you're not trying to make elevator music, you don't want to be there for that. Yeah, that would be a good thing though for like a piano vocal. Mm-hmm. An online recording studio where it's
just one instrument
with the piano, and then the vocal will then.
Unless you want to be there to help with arrangements and stuff in the moment, you'd lose that.
That's true. You would lose that. Mm-hmm. But these are things where it would work and where it wouldn't work. And so, watch out for the guy who's playing all the instruments and,
not that they're not talented, because there's some guys that can really pull it off, but you just lose something when you don't have other people communicating.
And when it's not happening simultaneously,
right.
And the vibe is going back and forth. Because he might be the best musician in the world, but he's only got 2 feet and 2 hands. And so he can't play all the instruments at the same time.
That's right.
So now know this, that most pop and really a lot of R&B stuff is programmed, like you said, Kelly, right? And explain a little bit about that.
Well, it is basically a one-man band, but it's more of a linear type of music where it's all very dialed in. There's not a lot of communicating. It's all about just a very specific message, musically speaking, and then with a little bit of bells and whistles, maybe bring in a guitar player or a keyboard player to do something a little bit different on the very back end, or a percussionist or something like that.
Now, can you give a couple examples of some really super popular records that we all have heard that are programmed?
Oh, just turn on a pop radio station. Lady Gaga, for instance, is a huge one. She's it's almost all programmed, and it sounds great, but that's a different animal, and so you need to be aware of that when you're going into a situation. You don't want to use a band for something like that.
Right. There's a situation where you got a live band, a live studio, but if you're trying to do something like Lady Gaga, or even some Luther Vandross stuff is programmed. Some of the R&B stuff is programmed.
Yeah. And some of it isn't. Old school R&B isn't. But you just got to be aware of what you really need.
Yeah. Right. What is it that you want it to sound like? And then if it's programmed, use a programmer, because if you use a band, it's just never going to be where you want it to be.
It's never going to be the same.
And you're going to be disappointed, right? And you're going to feel like you wasted your money, so you don't want to do that. So number 4, let's talk about the difference between a producer and an engineer, because there's a lot of confusion about
A great example was what you mentioned earlier, John, when you were in the studio with that fellow at the console, and your bass player asked him, "Hey man, is this okay? Can I do this?" And, "Well, do you like it?" And he just went along with it because he didn't have an educated ear, or maybe didn't care, or maybe he didn't feel it was his place, but for whatever reason, he didn't step up to the plate creatively and say, "No, this probably isn't what we want to do, and here's why." You need a captain of the ship,
and that's an engineer.
Right, an engineer is a technician.
Right, and Kelly, now,
and a necessary skill set that you have to have.
You've mentioned something really important here that I want to touch on, because you've been on both sides of this. You've been the producer, and you've also been the engineer with some pretty famous producers and famous artists. And there is a place for an engineer. You mentioned something. Maybe he didn't feel it was his place.
That's right.
If you're working with a great engineer and he's fantastic, and he doesn't understand that his role is also to be a producer, and you haven't communicated that. Then he's going to stay out of the way, because that's what he's exactly trained to do.
And some guys may have the skill set, and some guys may not.
Most
don't either have it or don't feel appropriate using it if you're just an engineer.
That's right. And I've worked, listen, when I first came to Nashville, rock and roll guy here, hair bands, I had, my vision of what stuff should sound like. And I started doing some demos with some great guys. A lot of them are still my friends, amazing players. And the engineer that I was working with was tricky. I wasn't getting what I wanted. In rock and roll, you have, not to be too specific, but there's room mics on the drums. The drums are more ambient than they were back in 1995 on country. And so I kept pushing that up. He kept pulling them down. And
part of that's a communication thing that a producer is going to have. You have to develop a relationship with that person and know that they're going to receive what you're telling them. And that's part of a producer's job, where an engineer is not so much.
Right. And there's the key. I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't have the frame of reference, so I wasn't communicating to him in advance what I wanted, and so these things are happening on the fly as the clock is ticking and money is flying out of my pocket, and I'm freaking out because I want to get this done, and I want to get it done for as inexpensively as possible, but I want it to be good.
But you're not getting what you want.
But I'm not getting what I wanted, and I didn't communicate with him, and so these are, again, things that you want to make sure, we strongly suggest, especially if you're an artist, you want to have a producer.
Essentially, if you're an artist,
you have to have a producer,
and somebody you trust, and someone you believe in that understands you, and you understand them.
Yeah, and you know what? You're going to be going through. Pre-production. There's going to be a lot of work before you ever get into the studio if that producer's worth their salt.
Yeah, if they know what they're doing and they really believe in your project, they're going to spend some time on the front end to make sure things are put in the right place.
That's right. And then also listen to their stuff too, because it was certainly, as you said, we've listened to a lot of people's projects where they paid artist track money to come into town, and they have even a crappy engineer, unfortunately. So things are distorted, and sometimes just sonically, it just doesn't even sound good. Forget about lack of helmsmanship and leadership on the direction of it all. It just sonically sounds like it was done by a subpar engineer, and so you want to make sure you're listening to that, And then that brings us to number 5: find a reputable production company or studio with an engineer and producer who understand your vision and your needs.
Right.
And now, what is the process for understanding my vision and my needs, Kelly? I can't just walk in and you go, "Oh, I know exactly what you need."
Exactly right. You need to have conversations. You need to develop a relationship with this person. You need to talk to them about it, and just ask the question and provide examples. Well, I kind of like this and I kind of like that, but this is And if you're a real artist, is there going to be a solid chance that there's not anybody out there doing exactly what you're doing? But you need to be able to talk to this person, the producer, about that, and the engineer on a sonic level, because they're going to want to talk about sonics as an engineer. I'm one of those rare people that is a producer and an engineer, so I can talk on both levels. I'm kind of freaky that way. But at the same time, it is two different hats. I mean, it really is, and that's what we tried to delve into a minute ago. And you need to develop those relationships so that you can understand, and it is kind of it's an important relationship to have. Not everybody. I mean, there are great producers that when I was an artist that I wouldn't have felt comfortable working with just because they weren't really my speed, for lack of a better term.
Maybe they can be great, they can be reputable, but if you're not jiving with them,
that's right.
Then you know what? Then it's better to work with somebody else. And you want them to take the time. You want them to be interested in what you're doing.
You want them to be passionate about your project.
That's right. And if they're not, and if they're like, "Don't worry, we'll fix it in the mix," if you hear that, then find somebody else.
Right.
I promise you could find somebody with like a skill set, or maybe somebody doesn't have as many accolades or as many trophies in the room. But if they want to spend more time. And they're passionate about what you're doing.
You like what they're doing.
And you like what they're doing. I mean, that's going to be the better fit,
Right.
And something else to kind of describe this in a really good way. I was just sort of thinking about this the other day, but I'm going to go back to my hairband days for a second. But the very first and the very second Bon Jovi records, the first one was called Bon Jovi, had Runaway on it. The second record was called 7,800 Degrees Fahrenheit, which is essentially forgettable. But that they were both produced by John Bon Jovi's cousin. He switched producers on the third record, which was Slippery When Wet.
Time to step it up a few notches.
He went to Bruce Fairbairn. And if you listen to the first two records, and there's really, really good songs on the first record, the songs, man, they it was the typical, my whole life to write the first record. I got a year to write the second record. And nobody stepped up, and, could have been a family thing going on. I don't know, because they're definitely family. But you don't know what happened. Right. The bottom line is nobody stepped up and put their foot in the artist's butt saying, you know what, these aren't as good as the
these
first
songs
record.
Aren't good enough.
We need them to be better and have that relationship and that trust and that back and forth where it's time to say, look, we have to set the bar higher. It didn't happen on the second record, and the second record sold worse than the first.
It suffered, yeah.
Then he switches producers and goes to the great Bruce Fairbairn, who clearly takes it not only to another level, but to the stratosphere.
Right.
And I'll tell you, like, from just seeing, like, and knowing and hearing different stories on artists that we've worked with who have worked with Bruce on what that experience is like. It's all starts with the songs. There's this video of it, like, I think because he did the
any good producer will tell you that.
Yeah,
it all starts with the song.
It's fun to see it though. It's fun to see it. Like, you can see it if you want to see it, man. Get the Aerosmith Pump behind the scenes Pump video. If it's I don't even know if it's on DVD because it was on video back in the day, but you can see them in like some sort of sub studio. They're not in the big studio where he liked to work out of in Vancouver,
right.
But he's in Boston with some cheap studio where they can just burn money and create and not at $2,500 a day, like $50 an hour or something like that, and just work on pre-production.
Right.
But this is 1980 something too, by the way. But and they're just sitting there, and he's pounding them on the quality of the songs and the quality of the lyrics and the bada 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 bada.
And everybody's process is a little bit different, but that's a great example, John. It's a great example.
So that's this is especially if you're an artist, this is what you're looking for. You want somebody to get married to your project and really invested in it, and you want to be able to be on the same page essentially.
And on a smaller level, with it being a songwriter, you want someone to help you with your songs, to make sure that they're tightened up, that you trust their judgment and their skill set to help your demos be the best that they can be.
And production really is the difference in the world on both of those. So now, what musicians will the studio be using? I mean, this is huge, like the amount of the pool that you have to pull from.
Yeah, number 6, right? This is number 6?
Number 6, right. You want to listen to the past works of these different musicians so that you can educate yourselves on the kind of stylistically what goes on. Everybody in this town slays it. I mean, every single musician that we bring through our studio is incredibly versatile and incredibly and can handle really just any project. But then there's the subtle things where we know this guy just excels at, you know, a heavier sort of greasy, you know, Stonesy kind of hand, and this guy is like picture perfect for a pop thing. And
well, you know, and to not to interrupt you, John, but also this is the sort of thing where if you've picked out the producer you want to work with, they're going to be working with them on this and stating your concerns and that because they're going to be ultimately the ones that are going to help guide you to the right people.
Right, and
so you're not going to be out on your own on this stuff.
That's right, but then this is what I'm saying. Like, you know, what musicians will that producer be using? Who do they know, and who will they cast from?
And who do they have good relationships with? Because, like for me in our studio and the projects we work on, I tend to use the same stable of people. I can reach out to pretty much anybody in town, but the ones that I work with all the time, and I've got a bunch of different ones that I work with, but they're going to really go to bat for me because I have a really working relationship with these folks. And if I'm not happy with something, they're going to go the extra mile to make it better, to give me what I want, to give the artist what they want. Especially when an artist is scared to tell the musician, well, it's still not what I want. They trust me. They look at me and they're not happy. Then I go to bat for them. That's the producer's job. Make them happy. And the artists the musicians that I hire, they'll do that for me.
Right. Now think about this for a second. So you go into a studio and, you know, we've seen this happen a couple times where people try to save a couple bucks and they just work with like the lowest engineer guy on the totem pole.
The guy fresh out of Belmont.
Fresh out of Belmont or fresh out of the recording school. And guess what he doesn't have? Relationships. Right. With the musicians. So guess who's going to be just as scared to ask like the big time keyboard player that you got working on your session who's done 1,000 records to do it one more time and how to serve it up. And guess who's not going to want to listen to that guy? And the big time keyboard player.
I promise I have been in those shoes. I have had situations. I'm thinking about one particular one with a Grammy award winning guitar player, and it was terrifying. He's just like, you're not putting any EQ on my guitar, are you? Because it's just right how it is. If you want it to be less bright or this or that, you just tell me. And I'm like, oh, yes, sir. You know, right. It's hard. It's intimidating. You have to have somebody who has a relationship. And it took me years to get those things. It took us both years to get those things. And it just takes time. So these are things to be concerned about, to be thinking about.
Yep, because clearly what you're not going to have is any of these relationships when you go in there. So so you want to make sure that that you're a role of a producer, like where you're in with somebody where they can really have your back on that and say, you know what, we were kind of thinking something different here. And not only is he not afraid to give the information, but the musician he's talking to is going to receive it.
That's right. They're going to want to perform for us or for whoever you hire.
That's right. And then the next thing, the finals, number 7 is moving forward with your songs when you're ready. And Kelly, this is one thing that this is another more of your input here that I thought was really, really important for this piece right here. We have just so many people that, they're your babies. Mm-hmm. We all know this. If you're a songwriter or an artist, you want perfection. And a lot of times the pursuit of perfection can be the absolute death of creativity and the death of forward progress. Mm-hmm. So every journey has to begin with the first step. Martin Luther King, I think, probably had the best step or the best quote with this, which was, faith is taking the first step when you can't see the whole staircase.
That's right. And
I promise you're never going to be able to see the whole staircase. No. So, as a point of perspective, we have to move forward, and we have to just it's a snapshot in time, I think was the language that you used.
That's what I used, yep. Especially with song demos, because as a writer, I think they're the ones that are really, really hell-bent on getting the song perfect. But even as an artist, it's the same sort of thing, because then you're spending more money, you want it to be perfect. But that falls back on your trust in the producer, the trust that you have the right songs. It's time to take that first step.
Right. And, just to give some ease, some language that I've used with some of our artists when they're uncomfortable in the situation and they're sort of nitpicking too much. Billy Joel had this great quote when he talked about all the songs that he's written, and he's written, God knows, hundreds of songs.
Great songwriter.
And we know probably he's had, I don't know how many top 10 hits, like 30 or 40,
a lot.
But he said, I love all my songs that I've ever written equally.
Yeah.
I love them as if they're all my children. They're all my babies. And some of my babies, they grow up to be doctors and lawyers, and they're very successful. And some of them grow up to be delinquents. But I still love them all. And so,
So he honors the experience. He honors the song. And some of them don't need to be the hit song. You got to go forward, especially as a songwriter, but also as an artist. You're not going to do everything perfect the first time. You're going to do your best effort. You're going to take more time and energy on the artist thing, but it's about moving forward and taking that snapshot in time as a song or as an artist and moving ahead.
That's right. And, one final thing to think about in this, just to provide, some ease to your soul so you can feel more comfortable in your own skin with this. I remember listening to an interview with Man for Man. You remember Man for Man in the redos that he did of the Bruce Springsteen tracks?
Right.
Blinded by the Light, and they were just talking about him on one of those rock shows late at night back in the day. And he's like, Man for Man, he's like from the islands. He's like, man, there's those first two Springsteen records, they were killer. They were good, but I love to play around with those because I could move some stuff around and make them a little more hooky, and I would do this. And then he goes, man, by the third record, he just got so good at it. I could never do anything better with it, But so there it is. But he got to that Born to Run record by doing the first two records.
That's right.
And there was no big, huge, massive hits on those first two records. But if you're a Bruce Springsteen fan, you love them.
That's right.
You love them because you were involved as a listener in the process of developing. So honor that too. Like if you're going to bring listeners in, they want to know, they want to be there from the beginning, and they want to be there to say, well, did you like them on Greetings from Asbury Park? Do you even know what that record is, or do you only know Born to Run? That's right. So there it is. 7 things you need to know before spending a penny on recording. We're hoping this will help you save some money and get some perspective, and certainly some education so you can make some educated decisions. And if, guys, this is all about before you even get into the studio.
That's right.
And the work
lots
that has
of preparation.
to be done. Yeah,
lots of planning. Yep.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this. This is our special thank you for tuning into our podcast episodes. And listen, once again, rate us. Give us a good rating, a good review, I guess,
or constructive
iTunes.
Criticism if that's how you feel.
Well, yeah, let us know what you liked about it.
Yeah.
If you found this stuff
how can we
valuable.
improve? Yeah,
that's right. And this will help us, get up in the rankings, and will also help us fine tune the information that we're giving you on this show to something that you really want to hear.
Yeah, it's more what you want.
All right. Have a great night.
Thanks.